The Grand Bellamy Hotel glowed like a jewel box on Friday evening. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across marble floors where Chicago's elite gathered for the annual charity gala. Waiters in crisp uniforms moved silently between tables carrying champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Among them was Grace Bennett. 26 years old with platinum blonde hair pulled back in an elegant bun. She wore the standard uniform of white shirt and red skirt. Her hands were steady as she balanced a tray, though. Her heart was racing. Grace had been working at the Bellamy for 3 years. It was good money, and the tips from events like this helped pay for her night classes at the community college. She wanted to be a nurse, to help people tonight. She would get that chance in a way she never expected. At table 7 sat Alexander Hunt, 38 years old with dark hair and sharp features that belonged on magazine covers. He was the CEO of Hunt Industries, a tech company worth billions. Everyone knew his name. Everyone wanted his attention. Alexander sat alone at his table despite being surrounded by hundreds of people. His date had not arrived yet. He checked his watch for the 3rd time. Victoria was late. Again. Grace approached his table with a fresh glass of champagne on her tray. "Your drink, sir," she said quietly. Alexander barely glanced at her. "Thank you," he said absently, scrolling through his phone. Grace set the glass down and was turning to leave when she saw a woman across the room watching Alexander intently. She was elegant in a black dress with dark hair swept up, Victoria Ashford. Alexander's fiancée Grace had seen her photo in the society pages. But something about the way Victoria was watching made Grace's stomach turn. There was no warmth in that gaze, only calculation. Then Grace saw Victoria nod slightly to someone, a waiter Grace had never seen before. He was near the bar handling drinks. Grace had worked enough of these events to know all the regular staff. This man was not one of them. Grace watched as the unfamiliar waiter prepared a drink. She saw him glance toward Victoria. Victoria nod again. Then Grace saw something that made her blood run cold. The waiter pulled a small vial from his pocket, just for a second, quick enough that anyone not watching would miss it. He tilted it over the champagne glass. Grace felt time slow down. She looked at Alexander, still absorbed in his phone, completely unaware. The false waiter was walking toward table 7 now. Grace did not think. She just moved. "Excuse me," she said, intercepting the man. "I can take that." The waiter looked annoyed. "I have it handled," he said, "Mr. Hunt requested me specifically." Grace lied. She kept her voice pleasant, but firm. The man hesitated. Behind him, Grace could see Victoria watching with narrowed eyes. "I insist," Grace said, holding out her tray. The waiter reluctantly placed the glass on her tray and walked away. Grace's hands were shaking now. She carried the tray toward Alexander's table. She had maybe 30 seconds before someone noticed what she was doing. Grace set the glass down in front of Alexander. Then she did something she had never done in 3 years of service. She pulled out her order pad, wrote quickly, tore off the page, and placed it directly in front of Alexander. The note said, "Don't drink it, and leave now." Alexander looked up surprised. His eyes met Grace's. She held. His gaze trying to communicate urgency without speaking, trying to make him understand. "What is this?" Alexander asked quietly. His voice was controlled, but Grace could see his mind working, processing. "Please, sir," Grace whispered. "Trust me." Alexander looked at the champagne glass, then at Grace, then at the note. His expression shifted. Something in her face must have convinced him because he stood smoothly. "I need some air," he said loud enough for nearby tables to hear, then softer to Grace. "Come with me." He placed his hand on her elbow. To anyone watching it, looked like he was being rude, summoning staff. But Grace felt the firm pressure, the urgency matching her own. They walked through the ballroom toward the terrace doors. Grace could feel eyes following, them Victoria's most of all. Once outside in the cool November air, Alexander turned to face her. Talk. He said, "Now." Grace took a breath. That champagne was tampered with. She said, "I saw someone put something in it." Who? Grace hesitated. This was a serious accusation. "Tell me," Alexander said. His voice was hard but not angry. "The man who brought the drink." Grace said, "I have never seen him before and I know all the regular staff. He was signaling to someone in the crowd." "Who?" Alexander asked again. Grace met his eyes. "Your fiancé." The words hung in the air. Alexander's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. "You are certain?" "I saw her nod to him twice," Grace said, "once before he prepared the drink and once after." "I saw him take something from his pocket." Alexander was quiet. Then he pulled out his phone. "Describe the man." Grace did height, build, hair color, the poorly fitted tuxedo. Alexander made a call. "Marcus," he said when someone answered. "I need you to review security. Footage from tonight's gala." He gave the time and location. "Find a waiter matching this description and track where he went." He paused, listening. "Also pull footage of Victoria Ashford's movements tonight." "No, I am fine," Alexander said. "Just do it. Quickly." He ended the call and looked at Grace. "What is your name?" "Grace Bennett." "Grace," Alexander said, "do you understand what you just did?" "I possibly saved your life, sir." "You definitely saved my life," Alexander corrected, "and likely exposed a murder plot." Grace felt her knees go weak. Murder, she had known it was serious, but hearing him say it made it real. "Come inside," Alexander said, "but stay close to me." They walked back into the ballroom. Victoria was at their table now. She looked up. As they approached, her smile was perfect. "Alexander, darling," she said, "where did you run off to?" Her eyes slid to Grace, cold and assessing. "I needed air," Alexander said smoothly. "Too many people." He sat down. Grace stood nearby, pretending to wait for instruction. "And who is this?" Victoria asked, looking at Grace. "Just staff," Alexander said dismissively. But under the table, he had pulled out his phone. Grace saw him type quickly. 15 minutes later, 2 men in suits entered the ballroom. They spoke quietly to hotel security. Then they approached table 7. "Miss Ashford," one of them said, "we need you to come with us." Victoria's face went pale. "What is this about?" "We have questions about an incident tonight." The man said, "Please come voluntarily, or we will be forced to make this public." Victoria stood. Her eyes locked on Alexander. "You do not know what you are doing," she said quietly. "I know exactly what I am doing," Alexander replied. "And I know what you tried to do." As security led Victoria away, the ballroom buzzed with whispers. Alexander stood and walked to where Grace waited. "My office," he said. "Tomorrow morning at 9. "Am I in trouble?" Grace asked. "No," Alexander said. "You are getting a reward and possibly a new job." "I do not understand." "You saved my life," Alexander said. "I do not take that lightly." The next morning, Grace arrived at Hunt Industries headquarters. She was shown to the top floor. Alexander's assistant led her to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. Alexander stood. When she entered, "Grace," he said. "Sit, please." Grace sat. "I owe you an explanation." Alexander said, "Victoria and I have been engaged for 6 months. What I did not know was that she had significant debts. She stood to inherit a great deal if I died." "Before we married?" "How?" Grace asked. "Life insurance policy. I foolishly took out naming her as beneficiary." Alexander said, $5 million. The substance in that drink was a fast-acting toxin that would have caused a heart attack. It would have looked natural. Grace felt sick. "She was going to kill you for money." "Yes," Alexander said. Thanks to you, she will spend the next 20 years in prison instead. He walked to his desk and picked up an envelope. This is a check for $50,000, he said, handing it to Grace. Grace stared at the envelope. I cannot accept this. You can and you will, Alexander said firmly. You saved my life. Also, I understand you are studying to be a nurse. Grace nodded. I am paying for the rest of your education, Alexander said, and when you graduate, Hunt Industries will offer you a position in our company health services. Why? Grace asked. Why would you do all this? Alexander was quiet for a moment. Because you did not hesitate, he said, you saw something wrong and you acted. You did not know who I was. You did not know if I would believe you. You risked your job to warn a stranger. He looked at her directly. That kind of integrity is rare. I just did what anyone would do, Grace said. No. Alexander said, you did what very few people would do. Most would have looked away, told themselves it was not their business. You chose differently. Over the following months, Grace and Alexander developed an unexpected friendship. He checked in on her progress in school. She asked about his recovery from the betrayal. They met for coffee occasionally, just talking. Somewhere along the way, the friendship became something more. 2 years later, Alexander proposed, not with a grand gesture or expensive ring, but with a simple question over breakfast. Will you marry me? Grace looked at the man who had become her best friend, the man who valued her honesty above all else. Yes, she said. At their wedding, Alexander gave a toast. 3 years. Ago, I almost died at a charity gala, he said. A woman I trusted tried to poison me, but another woman risked everything to save me. He looked at Grace. She did not know I would believe her. She did not know I would be grateful. She just knew it was the right thing to do. He raised his glass. To Grace, who taught me that real love is not about what you can gain, but about what you are willing to risk for someone else's well-being. Even a stranger's. Grace stood and kissed her husband. She thought about that night at the Bellamy. How scared she had been. How close Alexander had come to drinking that champagne. How one choice had changed both their lives. Sometimes courage is not about being fearless. It is about acting, despite your fear. Sometimes integrity costs you nothing and gives you everything, and sometimes saving someone else's life saves your own in the process, not from death, but from living without purpose, without connection, without love. If this story moved you, please like and share it with someone who needs a reminder that doing the right thing matters even when it is difficult. Subscribe for more stories about courage and integrity. Comment below and tell us about a time when you spoke up when it would have been easier to stay silent. Your courage might inspire someone else to act when it matters most.